For those listening in the background, dealing with some issues on the chat interface. Give me a minute to get that sorted and we will be good to go. Sorry folks, still trying to sort the chat box issue here. Sorry folks, still trying to sort the chat box issue here. Alright, it looks like that should do it. We'll go live. We'll go live. Here we are, folks. I am Mr. Justin with Secret Weapon Miniatures. This is my Manhattan, and we are live for another segment of Ask Mr. Justin. This month I'm doing things a little differently. I actually have a model that I happen to be working on today. One of my favorites, a StuG from Warlord Games. I'm still doing some work on this to finish putting it together. I'm going to be talking about this tonight in the show, as well as answering some questions. I did get some questions in advance that we'll talk about while I'm putting this together. Turning off my phone, since I just got a text in the middle of the live broadcast, and we can't have that now, can we? And check to see what we've got here. We have, folks, is anybody out there able to use the chat? I know we had some issues with it when I was getting set up this morning. Or this morning, just a minute ago, rather. I will keep my eye, of course, on the chat window while we're going, so if you do have a question and you're watching the show, please feel free to chime in. It does not necessarily have to be related to the project at hand. Everybody who's seen the show before knows that I enjoy a good tangent, so we'll get some tangential questions where we're going. Alright, so we've got folks using the chat. I'm going to start off with a bit of water, a bit of Manhattan. Tastes like nothing. Alright, let's talk a bit about the model I'm working on now as I put this together. This is one, like I said, this is a StuG III from Warlord Games. Great kit, simple resin kit. I'm doing a little bit of detailing on it right now just to put a bit of the stowage rack in the back. Nothing too fancy, and right now I am just starting with some lengths of styrene strip. You'll notice that it is painted at the moment. I use this in one of the workshops I do, just as an airbrushing demo, just very quickly. I'm actually going to go ahead and texture this hull and repaint everything. But I started the frame here, and I'll put this on auto manual focus if I need to. Certainly will at some point. I did the frame here out of brass etch. I'm doing some of the rods, obviously in little styrene. I'm going to start with some cutting. Alright, so I know that those are 9. And these are going to be harder to measure without my 6. Without my calipers. So 6. 6. That should give me all I need for the moment. There would normally be 2 in the back and 1 on each side here, so this should take care of everything. So I'm next going to take my big old pliers and get my pieces, tiny bit of super glue, cyanoacrylate, and attach it to the rig in the back. Hold that in place for a couple of seconds. Gives me any problems, I'll hit it with some accelerant, but that does make things a bit more brittle. So I'm going to finish doing the detailing here on this just before I start answering some of the questions, only because as I start working on the model later I'd like to have this part done. Now the reason for this is I did find some historical examples of the StuG III, specifically without the skirts, and a lot of the examples I saw it without skirts, and I don't intend to put the skirts on it this time. They did have the little stowage rack in the back, and they'd have some fuel tanks and stuff like that. So I intend to use some of my 1/48 barrels, fuel drums, the double reinforced fuel drums, and I'll put one of these back there. I'll add the road wheels that come with the kit, things like that, just to give it a little bit more detail. Obviously at 156 there's not a lot I can be doing for it, but something is better than nothing. Add a little bit of visual interest to this. Alright, now I need to line up my frame. Help if I did this on the camera where you guys can see me doing it, huh? So, step 1 will involve getting one of these guys down. Now normally I wouldn't go big heavy dollop of glue like this, but since we're going to be texturing the hull anyway, not going to make a big difference. We're going to go right over the top of that in just a little while. I hope everyone out there watching in internet land is having a good night. Do remember, of course, if you wind up with questions as we're going related to this project or something else, feel free to ask them. So you've got a few more folks coming in to say hi. So again, I'm just adding some super glue, cyanoacrylate, to hold that piece in place. Using the cotton swab to wick away the excess. And again, I wouldn't normally go straight onto the model like this, but like I said, since we are going to texture the model later, there's no real reason not to. Looks like for these little guys I will have to use some accelerant. No problem. I've got my little zap kicker right here. Can always tell which brush I've been using it for, or using with it, since it's got all the white gunk on the tip. Bam! Some on this side. Wick away the excess. What little bit is there. Bam. And again, a lot of this stuff I wouldn't do if I weren't going to be texturing the hull here in a couple of minutes. We'll cover up any of that excess glue. Alright. In this case, I want it right here. Gimme! No, it's too low. I have to pull that bad boy off of there by getting it just a little too high on the setup. That's where I want it. I'll try that again. Little zap kicker. Okay, don't stick to those things. And again. And again with the zap kicker. Last one, and we'll move on to something far more exciting, I promise. Apologize for actually not having this part done ahead of time. I had started it obviously before the show with the intention of getting things done, but I had some time that had to be spent with my 2-year-old, and he wins when it comes to choices between he and models. I will always choose the wee baby Seamus. There we are. We'll do a tiny bit of other weathering on, or other detailing on this guy tonight. And I am going to take the time right now to go in and manually focus this. I apologize. Looks like we're a little out of camera there. Boom! Isn't that better? Alright, can everyone out there hear me? Is the audio working on that end? Folks receiving audio? Oh, excellent. Alright. Oh, we got more folks. Hey, everybody. So, at this point, like I said, I've got the StuG III Ausf from Warlord Games. I've added the improvised stowage rack to the back that will of course wind up getting painted over in a bit. And once we have everything taken care of, I'll have one of the double reinforced, get it into focus since it's not auto, Field drums. This is 1/48, so it's a bit larger, but it still works, given that we're talking about a field drum. It can sit in the back, all nice and cozy. There you go. Alright. Enough silliness. So, let's open with a couple of the questions that did get sent in ahead of time. I do like to make sure we hit some questions from folks in the audience rather than just sit around and watch me work. I know this is the first time I've had a model to open with, and I wanted to make sure that we had a little something going on instead of just reviewing questions or waiting for questions to come in, especially. And one of the questions was how to select pigment colors. In fact, let me find it here. Rogue Palm wrote and said, how do you choose pigment colors, especially when they're not complementary, as with Urban red, gray, brown? And this is a great question. Obviously, I love pigments. So, the real trick is to look for examples in reality. So take a look at, unfortunately we have good examples of modern day urban rubble. You don't have to go all the way back to Stalingrad. You can look at pictures of Libya, you can look at pictures of Iraq, Afghanistan, and get plenty of good examples of what modern ruin buildings look like. And sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once here. Post the link and talk to you guys. I'm having a little more trouble with that than I thought I would. That's what I get for enjoying Manhattans while I work, right? There we go. So hit the Google, look for examples, real-world examples of urban rubble. Take your examples from that, take your colors from that. Let the reality that you're trying to create dictate the colors that you're going to use. Now obviously this is only true with real-world historical examples. I think one of my favorite army projects that I've seen so far is of course the Red Scorpions by Jack Campbell. And he did all of his weathering on those rhinos with I think it was terracotta and rust red, and this was to capture the red clay dust that is native to Perth, Australia, where he happens to be. And that got me thinking, of course, at the time, that there's nothing to stop us in the fantasy world here from closing our giant drawer full of plastic art. There's nothing to stop us from being in the fantasy world and deciding that I'm going to have a Mechanicus army if you're another 40k player, and everything's going to be the red of Mars, or it's going to be green from some plague planet. You can do obviously whatever you like. So when it comes to choosing colors for that, imagination is the only limit. The only thing I can say is, if you're borrowing from reality, whether you're borrowing from historical reality or the environment around you, in the case of those red scorpions, that's always going to lend some sense of legitimacy, some sense of reality to the work that you're doing. Even in a purely fantastical setting, it's best to have it be understandable, and obviously borrowing from reality will make that possible. You'll see this a lot with fantasy kits, sci-fi kits that are based on historical models, and again, it's just to add that sense of legitimacy to them. And that's what I'd say to do with choosing your colors. In the case of urban rubble, where you've got a couple of browns, you've got a couple of grays, and you've got a red, in that case you're talking about brick, mortar, and the dirt that you're churning up as you go over the sidewalks and things like that. If you're talking about sand environments, you're going to be talking about mostly yellows and browns. So let that dictate it for you. And boom, Rogue Palm also asks, fixer versus thinner, what's the difference? When you're working with pigments, a pigment thinner is a temporary or semi-permanent bond. Isopropyl rubbing alcohol, mineral spirits, turpentine, paint thinner, enamel thinner, any of these things are thinners. They are temporary or semi-permanent adhesives, fixatives for your pigments. A pigment fixer is going to be an actual matte enamel fixative, and it is a permanent adhesive for your pigments. Once you're done applying a pigment fixer over the top of your model, over the top of the section that you're working on, that's it. It's not going anywhere. You're done. That's fixer. You can make a wash out of a thinner or a fixer. The only thing that changes is the permanency of that bond. So that is the difference between a pigment thinner and pigment fixer. And one more here from Rogue Palm. Has lots of questions for us. I like it. Does the oil in your skin mess with pigments? I've never had it happen. I've never heard of anybody having it happen. I've never known that to be an issue. That said, it might mess with some of the other materials you're working with, even if it's not the pigments themselves. I mean, the pigments are effectively dirt, just high quality art grade or cosmetic grade dirt. There's nothing that really should interfere with that. It might interfere with the particular thinner or fixer that you're working with at the time. In general, try to keep the oil on your hands off your models anyway. It's generally best to have a clean model. Obviously, you'll see I'm working here with my StuG tonight, and I've got fingers all over it. I am doing my best to keep that to the tracks where it's going to be less important. You're not going to see me pawing at the hull an awful lot. When I'm working on a real high quality display piece, I will very oftentimes go ahead and make sure that I've got a pair of gloves on when I'm handling it. If I know that I'm going to have to actually touch the model instead of the handling surface, like my pin vise in the case of a couple of them. I'm one of those guys that tends to pin vise his models, so I'll either have it on a pin vise or I'll have it on a plinth or something like that that I can handle. Same thing with a vehicle. You can actually do that for a vehicle, particularly on something like this where it's got a bottom that's not going to be detailed. Take a screw, put the screw into the bottom of the vehicle, get a pair of grippy pliers, and you can hold it from the bottom. You'll also find some historical guys will attach it to their display bases by keeping that hold, lining it up on their display base, drill through the display base, and come back up with another screw so that if somebody holds the model up or takes the display and tilts it for some reason or bumps it, it doesn't come off. So, hey, 2 pro tips for the price of 1. Alright, checking the live streaming chat here to see if there are any shiny new questions. Delete that one, otherwise I'm going to get back to working on this tank here because the other questions that we have for pigments tonight all tie into stuff that I'm actually going to be doing on this model, which is, again, part of the reason I chose it. Hey, more folks again. Welcome! Tip my Manhattan to you. Well, mostly to me, because I'm going to drink it, not you. Oh, it tastes like Manhattan. Alright, so I am going to cut over. In fact, I might actually cut over to the fancy Camera 3. Bam! Look at that. You get model and you get me. Try to contain yourselves. So, I have done the improvised stowage rack. I'm going to bust out my handy dandy kit from Warlord. This kit really is great. Their packaging is nice. It is very much specific to the model in question. This kit does come with the side skirts. A bit thick, but that's the price of resin. Easy enough to thin down and weather on the destroyed StuG using the same kit that I did a while ago. Let's see if I can avoid bumping the camera and still get that model for you. Speaking of tangents, and speaking of models that are glued to bases, this guy is glued to the base. So you can see I did actually thin it down like in this spot here, so that I could peel it up. You see that I actually removed a section on this side. And if I can get the ugly tree stump that I want to replace to cooperate, I also broke it off on this side so that I could tilt it at a somewhat jaunty angle, just to make it clear that it had come loose. So this is the same kit. This is a very heavily weathered, abandoned StuG, complete with its anti-ditching beams. Mostly happy with this one. Mostly. Really don't like the tree, but that's what I get. Didn't have the time to make a tree from scratch. Talk about that sometime if folks are interested in learning to make trees from scratch. The basic answer is don't do it. It's crazy, crazy madness. So, I do need to finish putting the StuG kit together though. Corny Mortem writes to say, I like the pick and pick. Thank you, sir. I'm very happy with it too. Still trying to get all of the bells and whistles figured out here. Also realizing that the pick and pick means that I have to change my work area around here a little bit. Just because you guys are watching me where I happen to be working. So, let's clean this up. I'm not going to tidy this as much as I would, again, just because you guys are sitting here watching. I don't want to make you sit through the whole bloody thing. That just seems rude. Alright, that's that. We've got gun mount that sticks out of the top of that. That needs to be cleaned up. And I will peek up from time to time to see if there are any more questions for us, or for me. Share them with you guys. Of course, if you are watching on the blog or Twitch TV, Secret Weapon Miniatures for Twitch TV or the Secret Weapon blog, you'll see the live chat channel there, so you guys can say hi, catch up, check in, say what's what. Alright. Make sure I didn't have to do any more clean up to get that to fit. And again, I don't normally use my accelerant, in part because it smells really bad, but I want this to be quick. Quick. And I don't know about you, but I have horrible luck with cyanoacrylate. Super glue does not like me, and it bonds instantly, is generally a giant load of rubbish. One of those that will sit around and spend phenomenal amounts of time waiting for my CA to dry. Alright, pop that bad boy out of there, making sure it fits. Oh, I left the door to my office open. And the wee baby Seamus and his mom are coming into the house, which means that I will need to take a second here and close the door to the den. Because the first thing my kid's probably going to do is run down the hall and say, Papa, Papa, Papa. But I'll leave the door open just in case that happens, because it's cute and it makes me happy. And after all, that's the reason I'm here. Alright, so voila! We has a hatch. We have road wheels. Oh, my wife beat me to it. She's closing the door so we don't get to hear my kid be cute. We have road wheel. Thank you, dear. Bark, bark, bark. We have road wheels. We'll mount those road wheels right here in the back where they go. Alright. I will find my tweezers so I don't have to use my giant pliers. Putting the pigments away. I pulled the pigments out to use when I was answering the question about colors, but my son is a funky plaid, or I should say your son is a little Frenchman, and now I don't know how it is in your place, but we've got Papa here. It messes with my wife's family because they use Papa for the grandparents. The grandfathers are all Papa. So they kept telling us we need to change. It's like, no. We are Mama and Papa, and that's how it is. You can do whatever you like. Alright, we've got our road wheels. While I was gluing one of these in place, I did notice that this little guy right here has come loose. So I'm going to put down a bit of glue. And for those of you just tuning in, again, I wouldn't normally just slap glue on the hull like this. But since we are going to be texturing the hull, it doesn't really matter. Boom. Voila! Now I'm French. Don't tell Matthew. He'll correct all my French all night if he gets on the chat. Alright. Let's have a gun. Every good tank has a gun, right? Again, I can't say enough nice things about the Warlord kits. For the price you pay, the quality of the model you get, I'm very impressed. I have not actually seen the infantry in person. Well, that's not true. I have not handled the infantry. I've seen them at various events and cons and stuff like that where they were doing bolt action demos. And they look alright to me. Again, for 156, we're going a little smaller. Somebody out there in the channel has an opinion. I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, I am just cleaning up some mold lines on the gun here. Again, I'm not going to clean this up as much as I normally would. Mostly because I don't want you guys to have to sit through all that. So, viewers, hit me with some questions. What do we got? We got even more people. I want your questions. I'm happy to just sit here and work on a StuG all night so that I've got something to do while I wait for you guys to have questions. But we are going to detail this vehicle. I'm going to texture the hull. I will actually do the German forged steel texture on this. I do have a tutorial out there on that already. If you guys have already seen that, great. But you'll actually get to watch me go through it on a vehicle that I intend to keep. I do actually intend to keep this vehicle. Right. Looks good. One of the things you can do if you're checking for mold lines on a metal piece like this, run your finger over it. If it feels rough, chances are good there's a mold line. Alright, so Mount Bloom wrote to say that he had some questions that he posted on Facebook. That may be the case. I do actually have a long list of questions in a Word file of questions folks have submitted. They tend to be all over the map in terms of topic, you know, where to start with an airbrush, desert basing, how to make moss, dross, and slime, baby-proofing the hobby area, which is a topic that I'll be happy to talk about. How to use the washes on Death Corps of Krieg, paint shipping. Some of these actually right here, like paint shipping detail on a tank, we're going to cover right now during this one. Soft dust weathering we'll cover on this one. So if some of those are your questions, we will certainly get to them. Alright, so as I'm working here, Mountain Bloom had another great question that he just posted here. It is, when to use washes or pigments? Whoa, slow down, buddy. I'm gonna have to scroll back here and find all those. Don't get too far ahead of me, or I'll get lost. When to use pigments? When to use washes? I already got to scroll up. There we go. Pretty simple. One of the things that I hear a lot when I'm talking weathering with folks is that you can get great weathering without pigments, and that's true. You can. You really can. What you can't get without pigments is texture. A well-painted rust is two-dimensional. It's always going to be two-dimensional. A well-pigmented rust is always going to be three-dimensional, because you are creating not only color, three-dimensional color, but you are creating three-dimensional texture. So when you are trying to create weathering that involves texture, and that's any weathering that involves texture, I don't care if it's ash, soot, dust, mud, grime, any of those things, it needs to have texture, and in which case it needs to have pigments. And there are very few textures out there, and very few weathering textures that we can't create with pigments. Alright, cyanoacrylite under the fingernails, always a favorite of mine. I don't know about you, but I love having glue under my fingernails. And yes, I'm being entirely facetious, because I hope that nobody in the world likes having glue under their fingernails. It sucks. Alright, I'm going to pull this off screen for just a minute, just because what I'm going to do, actually I will move the camera, as much as I am loath to do so, to give you guys another tip here. So one of the things you can do when you're trying to get the little pieces of flash, like on a little loose piece like this, I'll hang it right over the edge of my table, cut them off. That way I've got something to work against. I can actually get this flat against my little cutting mat, right? See how that works out? Easy peasy. Super easy cleanup. Just check this out real quick. There shouldn't be mold lines, because of where I saw the separation lines. All those little points of flash are good. Alright, move the camera back. So, let's come back to some of these questions here. Let's see what we've got. We've got follow up to that, what order should the medium be applied? Yeah, that is a good rudimentary pigment question. We'll come back to that as I start working on pigments for this model tonight. Hit me with that question. I will also do an entire pigment episode. Tonight I'm actually doing this, dedicating it to the StuG. Next month, the October episode, I'm going to do entirely about airbrushing. I want to talk about airbrushes for all of October. That's very much a change. This is only, episode 3, so starting to get a feel for it as we go here. And one of the things I want to do is definitely start dedicating an episode to a specific topic or line of topics. Like tonight, in this case, it's just going to be start to finish talking about detailing a model, finishing a model, texturing a model. It will include pigments, it will include color modulation, a little bit about airbrushing, but in this case, I'm being a little selfish. I haven't had a chance to work on a model in weeks, so I'm taking the opportunity and using it as a teaching tool. You see what I did there? Bam. Alright. Oh, hey, I'm not on the split cam, so let's split the cam. You'll see I'm adding it in one of the hatchways here. Yeah, Con Mortem mentioned that there are spots where you can see the cyanoacrylite, the super glue. And again, for those of you just tuning in, I would not normally just put CA directly onto a hull like that, CA cyanoacrylite, super glue. I would not normally put it directly over the hull, but one of the things that I'm going to do is texture this hull using some putties. I'm going to add weld lines, weld seams, or weld beads rather. I'm going to add some German forged steel texture. And all of that is going to cover up any of my little CA spots, things like that. Because, yeah, sure enough, if you have glue spots like we have here on the back, try to get the light so it shines. Oh, there you go. Perfect shine right there, right? That's going to show up when you paint. It's going to show up as texture because, again, you've got a texture there that is large enough that you're not going to be able to mask that over simply by painting. All right. The rest of our road wheels, I'm actually going to leave these off. I don't even know if I'll have a chance to apply them tonight while you guys are watching. These are the rest of the road wheels and sprockets, or drives rather, and they normally go on here like this, but I do want to put some texture on the inside of the holder. I'm going to put some dried mud in there while we're working, so I'm going to skip those. The other piece the kit comes with are the little standoffs for the skirts, but since I'm not going to apply the skirts, we don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I don't have to care, so I don't. You won't fight about it. No. Alright. I've got my little section of spare track here. Am I going to apply this to the front? Normally it would go, yeah. But I have not made a mount for that, and this doesn't come with one. So I'm going to leave it off only because if I was going to put that there, I'd want to detail it so that we actually had some latches, some hooks in place to hold that on. And I don't want to take the time to make those hooks, so we are going to skip it. It makes me a little sad, but there it is. Hey, Warlord guys, if you're watching, put some little latchy bits on your little spare tracks. That'd be super awesome. Little tiny thing you guys could do to kick this up and make this tank go to 11. And if I can be smarter than my tube of cyanoacrylite, I told you guys, I never have any luck, right, with CA. Tube's dry, tube's clean, I'm holding it upright, trying to screw it together, it's misthreading. Somebody out there is going to say, why do you use the small bottles, that's the problem. And it's not. Small bottles are great. My giant bottles of CA, I've got up there on the work shelf. Ooh, they dry out. It's awful. It's awful. Don't do it. Every time you use a big bottle of cyanoacrylite, somebody kills a puppy. You're responsible for those puppies. Alright, so let's talk about texturing this hull. I am here. I'm going to texture the hull. I'm going to drink a little Manhattan, a little bit of water. One of the things we can do to add some good realism to a tank like this is texture the hull, and this works at any scale. I did forget to bring my Dremel over, so I'm going to start with that. I'll be right back. It's over here at the second desk. Should be easy to get to. Emphasis on should. desks are task specific, so I actually keep my all my build tools and build supplies over at that desk so that I don't find myself getting distracted by the computer when I should be building a model. There we go. Easy, right? So, I'm going to turn on the Dremel and subject you guys to some horrible, horrible noise. I'm going to start here where you guys can see it under the camera. Go all in for that. I'm going to just create some rough spots. I'm going to rough up some of the edges a bit. This is a fine tip burr. Apply a little bit of pressure. Let it roll. Right now you'll see I'm just creating in that case a slightly longer or deeper hole than I wanted to, so I'm just going to flatten that out, creating a reasonably random texture. Letting it roll randomly across the surface. I'm going to fill a lot of this in with putty. It's not quite as random as it looks now. Just what I want to make sure I do is create a non-smooth surface anywhere on the model. And I'll do this again with a combination of putty and Dremel. Some of this just involves taking off some of that paint right now. A lot of the movement you see going on right now is just me pressing gently against the tank, so it's bouncing. It's fine. It helps give us a more random texture. If I see a spot and I say, alright, I want a little divot there, I push a little harder. Like I certainly will here on the sides or the track guard. I'll do my standard texture that up a bit, but I'm going to come in on the sides. Give it some little love taps. Come around that tool. Love taps. Engine area, I'm going to get a bit. Not as much, in part because I've got all the pieces in the way. I don't want to damage them. This time I'm fully control here, very carefully coming in. Hit up some of that glue. Back of these things to be pretty dinged up. It's where most of the muck comes around. Sorry for being off screen. I'm back to you here. Hit the exhaust here. I'm also going to put a little line down the middle because all the pictures that I've seen make this a dual exhaust. They cast it as a single. Might be a casting choice, might be a historical reference that I don't have. But I'm actually re-sculpting slightly. Just with a Dremel. Nope. Nearly forgot the front. now I'm going to come in and strategically place a couple little divots. Not for anti-tank damage, but just because after I fill it in with putty, they'll create a nice little visual element. You would have little pits and dings. That would be common in a vehicle like this from the forged steel texture. Alright, so I've got that. Anybody watching, questions at this point? The other thing I'm going to do, I've got a can of canned air here. Sometimes on larger models, larger kits, I'll actually take it out to the shop where the compressor is for our pressure tanks, and you know we have one of the little fine nozzle sprayers, and boom, 100 psi, hit these things, knock off all the loose bits, intentionally or otherwise. All right, the rest of this stuff I know I got ready beforehand. I was trying to be good this time. I know folks in the past have said, you know, hey, watch out for the tangents, and please have the materials ready beforehand. I'm trying. I'm listening. We'll hook you up. The other thing I need that I never know whether or not I have, and I went looking but didn't find any, is a bit of hard cardboard or sprue or something. I didn't find any earlier, so aha. This will do. Because I'm going to mix up some of this putty, and it's nice to have the putty on a surface frankly won't care, or that I don't care about. So let's go back to the camera. I'm looking here. I don't see any outstanding questions. I do see a lot more folks. Hello! Thank you for tuning in. Do check out the chat interface if you're watching on the blog. It's just below the post here. If there's a problem with it, let me know over at Twitch TV. It's Twitch, twitch.tv/secretweaponminiatures. That's the actual broadcast that we're using. Get to the chat interface there. Say hi, ask questions. Obviously this is the Ask Mr. Justin segment, so if you do have a question, we can take a break. And I'm coming to that. What kind of putty? Look at this. Mortem wants to know what kind of putty I'm using. And I am using Squadron Products, or Squadron Products Fast Drying White Putty. A little bit of throwaway cardboard and some MEK, methyl ethyl ketone. This is the Testers plastic cement. Maybe I should stick to some water here for a while, right? Whew. Getting ahead of myself. Oh, there we go. That's the right answer. Alright, so this is the Testers plastic cement. And I'll use this to help break up. This is a plastic putty. I will help use this to break it up. And I have here a really crappy, like, I don't know, 29-cent, very stiff bristled POC brush. If you don't know what POC stands for, look it up, because PG-13 show here. Actually, I think I can say crap on PG-13. So, alright, so I'm going to take some of my white putty. I'm going to put a big old blob on here. Blob! It's more than enough for this project. I will take my MEK. The tester stuff comes with a brush. So I'll just take that, brush it in here a little bit. Just dab some of it over the top. I will take my stiff brush, mush that around. MEK. The thing you're looking for here is soft plastic putty. It must be nice and soft. If it starts to get to be just a little too much effort, at least for larger models, I will sometimes take my big brush, dip it right in the MEK, and away I go. Because then what I do is I load up my brush full of this stuff, and I'm very carefully going to stipple it onto them. Try to stipple it onto the model. It's getting absorbed by the brush more than it normally does. And what you'll find this does very quickly, especially since there's still some pigment loaded up here from a different project, is cover the model in a light texture. In fact, given the time constraints of what we've got going on here, I'm going to open up my MEK. I'm just going to work straight from my hobby brush. Again, I normally wouldn't do that either. But you can see very quickly I've got a much thinner squadron putty now. Thin is what you're going for. It's better to go small areas, thin layers, because you don't want to fill in panel lines. I'm going to have to hit some of these panel lines anyway, because they're pretty fine. So you're looking for just a little bit of texture. And one of the things you'll find, and you see this again mostly on historical models, is that the different tank manufacturers, the Allies and the Germans, Russians, had different casting methods, different foundry methods for their vehicles, and it gave a different texture to the hull of that vehicle. So you could tell by looking at a piece of steel what the country of origin was. Now, a nice thing in the fantasy world for those of you, and I know most of the folks watching are war gamers, probably my 40K buddies, some War Machine folks. The nice thing about our world is that we don't have to care quite as much, right? I can put foundry numbers on a warjack without worrying that I've got, the correct Russian foundry. I know that there are companies out there that exist to do that research for you, and people that do that research and say, oh, well, I found that this is the foundry symbol for company XYZ, which is the one that manufactured the tank in 1947. It's too much. It's too much for most of what we do. Way too much. So it's nice being able to just say, all right, well, I'm going to take my favorite texture. In this case, is the German steel texture. It's part of the reason I like working on German vehicles. I like the texture. Put more effort into it, you get a better result. Obviously, I'm going fairly easy here, very quick. I'll probably still sand this at least a bit. On my models, I'll sometimes do 2 or 3 applications. Apply, sand, apply. I do have a separate bottle of MEK that I use for this. Largely because I don't want to get the goop, the plastic cement, in all of my other projects where I'm using plastic cement. I do bind most of my plastic models with MEK. I don't use a lot of cyanoacrylate when I'm working. Alright, and I will get it onto the back and onto the exhaust, and again you can see right here in the exhaust where I turned it into 2 separate exhausts just by carving in that little channel. I can't help it on the StuG. It's one of the few that I know anything about. Also, never use your fingers for this because it's nasty, toxic. So don't do that. I would never do that, so you shouldn't do that. Just pretend that I didn't do that. I'll finish doing my texture, and then I will zoom in manually fix the focus so that you guys can see what I've created here. Realize I keep going out of camera there, sorry about that. Trying to get better. Look up now and then. It's easy to get distracted by the work at hand. Nice and thin. I figured one of the nice things about this particular process is I've never been able to take the time to put up a video of just me like, hey folks, here I am, I'm working on a tank and I'm finished. So I'm hoping that this is a nice opportunity for that. There is one thing I'm going to do right now before I do anything else, and that's put you guys on hold. Why? Because this stuff is nasty and I want it out of here. I'm actually going to open the window to the den right now. despite the fact it's hot outside. It's like 94 degrees in Sacramento today. Open that window. I'm going to take this out to the trash, and I'm going to turn on the house fan while I do it. So I'll be right back. And the den is so much hotter. That is crazy madness. Alright, I am back. I've got a can of primer. I took the crazy smelly stuff out of here. Still a little smelly. Still smells a bit like MEK, but not nearly as bad as it was. Alright, though we've got Quartamortem wants to know, what do you wash your brush in after using MEK? And the answer is simple. More MEK. I will actually take this brush. That's part of the reason I said I have a special bottle of MEK just for this stuff. Seriously? Oh, right there in front of me. And you can see, I'll put this under the camera, all of the nasty floating around in here. I mean, this is white. It's nasty. MEK should be clear. And I just rinse it off in more MEK, clean the brush thoroughly, dry it as much as possible. It's part of the reason I can't get all the MEK smell out of here. The good news is that it's horribly toxic, and it will probably kill me before the end of the show, so you won't have to put up with me all night. Great news, right? All right, so I've done that. I'm going to take a bit of sandpaper. But Mr. Justin, why didn't you get your sandpaper ready ahead of time? I did. My sandpaper is always ready. It's right here. Okay, the one I want is not. We'll work it out together. There we go. This is some 220B sandpaper. Right. Robrew wants to know what MEK is. MEK stands for methyl ethyl ketone. And in this case, the MEK that I am using is Tester's Plastic Cement. I have a habit, and this is actually a habit I really recommend that any of you who are going to stick around in the hobby get into, and that's to use the chemical names for the products that you're working with. Sorry, I got to open the window again. I'll deal with being hot. Learn the chemical names of the products you're working with so that when you're talking to another hobbyist, you guys are talking about the same thing. If somebody says they're using plastic cement, I tend to assume they mean MEK. But it's a lot better if somebody says, you know, hey, are you using MEK for your models? Same thing, I didn't know that Zap-A-Gap was a super glue substitute. I did not know that it was cyanoacrylite. Super glue is cyanoacrylite. And I had somebody talking about Zap-A-Gap for like 15 minutes, and I was thinking, wow, it's like some gap filler. Before I finally clicked, and I'm like, wait, is that a glue? And they're like, oh yeah, it's just like super glue. And I'm like, oh, okay. I thought this was some new product. We don't have Zap-A-Gap in any of the shops around here. And oddly enough, we have the Zap Kicker, which is by Zap, which turns out are the people who make Zap-A-Gap. And anyway, I'm not saying I'm not an idiot. I'm just saying I didn't know. So, back to camera one. We've killed our first hour here just on texture and a couple of simple questions. I'm going to take a small section of my 220 and very gently, just a little bit, sand this bad boy down. I'm also going to give you guys some light. Maybe. Woo! Come on, camera. catch up. Alright, if you guys think that's too much, let me know. I think it's a little too much. But it seems like otherwise it was getting a bit dark on you guys as the sun sets. Because all I'm doing is, with my 220 here, just taking this down. You want a soft texture, because again, this would be forged steel. And you can see, I will zoom in, configure, video input, camera control, zoom! Oh, wow, actually that's pretty much exactly what I wanted. I was going to be all dramatic and funny. Here we go. Alright, I'm going to try turning off that light and see if I get it. Whoa! Well, actually, that might be better. We might get better contrast with no light, just the natural light coming through here. Alright, so you can now start to see some of the texture that we got on this hull, right? You've got some of the nice little gashes where the mold would have been, a little wear out from the mold, but then you can see we've got some of these little putty plops, and that's what you want to get rid of. So I'm going to come in here, actually use my putty or my hobby knife, just scrape that down a little bit, much too much. We soften it. You can actually do this while the putty is wet. You take some fine grade sandpaper like the 220. You can actually do it while the putty's wet. Let's zoom back out here. And you can press that texture into the putty, and again to create that nice soft round cast look. Alright, so I'm going to zoom in on you again. Here we are, same spot. You can see I've got some nice little dings and texture. Same spot over here. Got nice texture. It's interesting, right? A little more interesting than a smooth resin or plastic or metal model. A lot more interesting. Alright, let's go back to PIP. Ooh, well, not that one. PIP. There we go. And just got a compliment on the shirt. Yes, thank you very much. This is my I Godzilla Tokyo shirt. Went to put it on this morning actually before work, and I couldn't find it. Finally asked my wife, and it turns out, to nobody's surprise, it was in her shirt drawer. She seems to claim that I gave her permission to take this one, and no, she's crazy. She's crazy. Alright, so again, just quickly sanding some of the texture, bringing it down a bit. Doesn't need to be quite so rough. So here's our model. Let me come back to settings, configure, settings, not kidding, configure, video input. The software is super twitchy. So, we are zoomed in, we are focused. So, right away, you can see texture on the hull. Now that'll come through when I paint. It'll make everything a bit more interesting. We're going to one-up this, and I'm actually starting to think that by the time 6 o'clock rolls around, I won't have done all of the painting. I actually expected to largely have this model finished for you guys, but I think not tonight. So, I want my liquid green stuff, which I moved. I put it in a better spot. Suddenly thinking, oh no, I lost my liquid green. Okay, I did. I lost my liquid green stuff. It's not where it should be. I promise, I was ready for this. It should be where it should have been. Alright. So, alright, reading a comment there. Let's check where it doesn't belong anymore. course, I might have put it in my travel kit. This is my 1-quart bag. You can tell I've been flying recently. I just got back from the Nova Open. Great event. If you're on the East Coast of the United States, I highly recommend the Nova Open. Had a wonderful time. Damn you, Orchide Shade, for looking so much like liquid green stuff. Well, this complicates things a bit. I was going to do a thing that involved liquid green stuff. I've got a couple of little gaps to fill. And I was going to show you how easy it is to do weld seams with liquid green stuff. But guess what? It looks like I may not get to do that. I apologize. It's one of the things I didn't bother to look for before the show because it is always where it belongs. And I put it right here in one of my drawers with my sculpting tools because it just makes sense, right? It is a sculpting material. Nope. Green, nope. Lots of oil paints, nope. It's just gone. No reason for me to take it with me. Here's my gloss varnish. I've been looking for my mat. Well, new Secret Weapon staff shirts. It's not under that. It's not under our new super secret, top secret, not telling you about it tonight project. So I will do one last peek around here and then I will give up on doing weld seams that way. In fact, probably give up on doing weld seams altogether and just talk about doing weld seams with liquid green stuff on another night because it's just the way it should be done now. It is. Games Workshop gave us this incredible tool for creating weld seams and they didn't even know it. Check my... McClyman says that I should check my wife's drawer. Yes, I should check my wife's shirt drawer for the green stuff too. You know what? Stranger things have happened. I have to say that when you have a production shop that includes 4 full-time employees, you find all sorts of weird crap in weird places. I like to joke with you guys that start work here that you know you're actually one of us when you find little bits of resin in your underwear drawer, your clean underwear, right? So you go to put them on in the morning and there's little flakes of resin in there. You're like, all right. I actually work there now. All right, well, who needs weld seams? You know what? Weld seams suck. Nobody likes weld seams. They don't, right? It's a symbol of shoddy craftsmanship and awesomeness, but mostly shoddy craftsmanship. So we are going to skip by the weld seams. I will spend the rest of tonight wondering what happened to my liquid green stuff, though, because like I said, I keep this place pretty well organized. I can kind of tell we've got all the 2 desks and all the stuff, and I haven't been building anything, so I don't know. We'll move on. Here we go. We are going to have to move the big camera, or the floor cam, I should say. Get this out here so that I can prime in the safety of my spray booth. Now there are some things in the live broadcast that no matter how much prep we do are still going to have to be a little disjointed, and spraying is going to be one of those, just because in order to spray I have to be able to get to the spray booth. In order to get to the spray booth I have to move the camera mid-show, right? But you guys don't mind that, right? Get to see some spraying going on here. This is all the stuff we'll be using for the spray tonight, so technically it's not in the way. Alright, I will do, the October show is going to be largely devoted to airbrushing, so I will talk a great deal about airbrushes at the time. Tonight I am using my Infinity Chrome. I'm combining my 2 favorite airbrushes here into one, right? I'm using my Badger Renegade Chrome. It is fan-freaking-tastic. I absolutely positively love this airbrush. It is amazing. This is the first airbrush built from the ground up for figurine painters, for guys like us, guys that are painting dollies. Don't kid yourself, we paint dollies. Dollies with chainsaw swords, perhaps. but dollies. So this is designed from the ground up for figurine painters. Badger Airbrush, family-owned company. Ken's great. You'll see him at Adepticon coming up here in April. I really recommend the airbrush. It is why we are selling it. You guys know that there are two products we sell on the Secret Weapon website that we don't manufacture. It is the Raphael paintbrushes, in my opinion, the best Kolinsky sable brush on the planet, and now the Raphael Chrome. We have a couple of airbrush compressors coming. We'll sell them as a kit, just because if you are painting models, you should be using an airbrush, and we're selling it for 129 bucks. My other favorite airbrush, there's actually 3 that I use on a regular basis up at the top of the table here. My Steenbeck Infinity and my Grex Tritium. These are $300 plus a piece versus the $129 for my Chrome. And the Chrome deals with our really crappy acrylic paint in ways that the other don't. I gotta get over things now. So, boom! Spray booth. Unhappy baby, apparently. Spray booth is working. So I'm going to talk real quick about priming a model. My stencils, my tools. Chances are good you're over priming a model, and I'm going to prime this in white. But I probably should choose a different color. Should have chosen a different color so that you guys could see it more clearly. But so here I start with that nice, do it on the other side, nice gray plastic side, right? It's resin, it's gray. When I'm finished, what color should it be? Somebody on the chat, you tell me, what color should it be? The answer, for those of you playing along at home, is gray. Should be gray. Despite the fact we put putty on here, which would help the paint stick, your normal model is gloss. I open that window again. My spray booth does not like sucking up primer, apparently. So, in that case, it should be gray. In this case, a very light gray. So I've still got something. It looks a little more white here than it really is because we've got that white putty down on top of everything, right? But you can still see nice little gray spots all through here. And that's what we want. We want our model to actually be gray. What we're doing is giving the model teeth. We call it giving the model teeth. Because paint doesn't stick to... Got to turn off the spray booth for a minute. Paint doesn't stick to a gloss or a satin surface as well as it does to a matte. So the only thing you're using your primer for is to create a surface that paint is going to stick to. We call it giving the model teeth. And that's just little grippies for the paint to stick to. So in this case, I've got my historical example up. I'm going to pull out some colors. I've got my P3 collection here. I love my P3 paints, especially through the airbrush. There's my rucksack tan. What we got? What do we got? What do we got? What do we got? What do we got? I need my, not my bloodstone, tempting though that may be. My blood tracker brown. I think my battle dress green, not ironhold gray. You're a liar. Another one of the things that I would have taken care of, but I was busy taking care of a 2-year-old, which at the time, whom at the time was very happy. We went outside, we played, we had a good time. I might stop there because I don't think I have a green handy that's going to work for what we're trying to do. So I will do this in just the Africa Corps Desert Yellow is what we're going to do. Alright, so our Dogma has asked, what is the best primer for painting dollies and similar materials that you've experienced using? And that answer is easy for me. Games Workshop's Go White! It's funny, I use this joke all the time when I travel and teach classes. There are three things in the painting and gaming world you don't talk about. Politics, religion, and paint brands. You know, if you've been to a gaming event, you've been to a hobby event, we can talk about sex pretty much all day. Sex and gaming all day. But we don't talk about paint brands, we don't talk about politics, we don't talk about religion. It never ends well. Your mileage may vary. I know people that absolutely positively, with all their heart and soul, hate Games Workshop sprays. This is what I like about Games Workshop sprays. You want to know about sprays? Get on a Tiger website. Go talk to these guys in their forums that spray paint art. That's what they do, right? We can debate whether or not it's art another time. This is what we're after. This is a fine mist spray cap. It gives you, wait for it, a fine mist. Very fine mist. The other ones you have out there in the world are conical, which are tight, or in the case of Krylon, they've got their little adjustable lines, so it gives you a line. I think P3 gives you a line too. I used the P3 primer for the first time the other day. I largely don't give a crap about brand. Truth be told, I don't give a crap about brand. If you're using primer correctly, you shouldn't have any problems with it. I know I've had people hand me a can of primer and say, oh, well, this one's a bad batch, and, you know, it gives you that orange peel effect. Shake it up, use it correctly, stay out of the sun, stay out of extreme moisture, and it works just fine for me every time. The thing I look for is that cap. Some cans, you can swap the caps out. You can actually get on some of those Tiger websites, and they'll have web stores where you can order replacement caps. I've got a sack full of them in the shop. And you can actually swap out. So if I'm looking for a specific color, boom, boom, change out the cap, and you're good to go. That does not work. I have not found a cap that works in the Krylon cans yet. Truth be told, I haven't actually spent a lot of time looking for it because I don't use a lot of my Krylon sprays anymore. The other thing is, oh, it's not in here. I've only got this. The Vallejo Satin and Matte varnish. Include those fine mist caps. We've got Mount Bloom again asking how I feel about the Vallejo Surface Primer. I've never used it. If, like the other Vallejo sprays, it has that fine misting cap. Again, what I care about is the fine misting cap. Fine misting cap for the win. That is what you want. Are we good? We're good. I'm going to say that we're good. I am going to... Oh, it's liquid. It comes in a bottle, not a can. Well, as long as you're priming through the airbrush, guess what your airbrush has? It has a fine misting nozzle, so you're good to go. Same thing. Most of the time that I do my airbrush for the win, most of the time I do matte or satin or gloss varnish. It's Vallejo from the bottles. I like the bottles. Tonight I'm using my Badger matte, which actually, despite the fact I've been using for years, I didn't realize until tonight it was Badger. Alright, so I am thinning my paint. We'll talk about thinning paints on the airbrush episode, which is not tonight. Don't get your hopes up. I still don't have paper towels over here. I have a paper towel holder for that desk, but I haven't had time to put it in. Which means I don't have paper towels over there. Because the last thing in the world I want is more crap loose on my desks. I have plenty of that. Woo! Knocking cameras, knocking desks. Alright, so apparently Vallejo, according to Mount Bloom, has a dozen or so different primer colors. Now, generally speaking, I prime white. The end. It's just that simple. If you are not saturating a model, you don't care that it's red, because you're going to paint the model red. You're not starting with a red surface. And having done this, I have decided that if I'm only going to have my greens, or I mean only my tan colors, I'm going to paint the model gray. I can do that. It's my show. So I'm going to take these two little browns, toss them in the rubbish, and find my grays. because I can. I will need grays that are in fact in here. I know because I took them for the classes that I was teaching. Stuff my 1 quart bag back into the back. And iron hull, where'd you go? Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Blue. Well, of course I do that thinking it's going to be easier. Now I can't find my iron hull gray. And if you travel with paints, remember, if you're in the United States, you can travel with as many paints as fit in a 1 quart bag and no more. Are you kidding me? Thank you very much. Oh, you're going to spend the rest of the night watching me find paints again. But yeah, the trick with paint, with primers, you know, people say, oh, well, what color? And it's like, well, white. White is not going to desaturate your color, and you don't want to desaturate your paint. So if you're trying to paint a model red, you don't need a red primer. You need a red paint. Paint your model blue, you don't need a blue primer. You need blue paint. But if you prime your model black, it means you're desaturating the color. And you don't want to do that. Keep that out. Change my mind on that color. Wait, what's that, Mr. Justin? You are going to do some highlighting on gray with frostbite? Yes, I am. You want to fight about it? I'll throw my son at you. I may not be able to take you, but my son's name is Seamus Connor McCoy. He's already won every fight that he's ever going to get in, simply by dint of his name. Oh. The straw is missing from my squeezy bottle. That's what I get for traveling. There's supposed to be a straw on the end of that. It is in a box over there, so I'm not going to make you sit around while I do that. Wasted enough time finding paints and on tangents. So there's a fair chance I'm going to overthin my paints. Cross that bridge when we get there. That's what I get for going to Nova Open. Again, great event. They had all of the famous Washington, D.C. monuments done up, most of them in reasonable facsimile of scale, on the tables for their narrative event. And they lit up. So I've got some pictures that I'll be posting to our Facebook page. Alright. Shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it. Shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it. I have thinned my paints. We're going to go paint a model. That is camera set 3. So, I have broken my Manhattan. Must be just about quitting time. Alright, so I'm using my full Badger setup tonight. I've got my Renegade Chrome, and I actually have my Aspire Pro compressor sitting right here next to me. Again, in the October episode, I do intend to spend more time talking about airbrushes. I would have done that tonight, but like I said, I'm doing my best to make sure that I'm prepared for you guys ahead of time. Obviously, still some hiccups there. But for the airbrush episode, I want to make sure I had several models ready to demo on, and all of my airbrushes ready to go, paints thin, everything prepared. So, first thing I'm going to do is a bit of appreciating. This is another one of those things, right? I joke about the fact that you don't talk about certain things in the modeling world. And appreciating is one of those. I find that in the wargaming world, some of the figurine painters that I really respect don't appreciate and kind of poo-poo it. And of course, my chrome for the first time is going to give me trouble. It's because the needle's loose. Excuse me. It's always something. Oh, I know what I did. Renegade kit. took one of my caps off, the fine line cap off, and didn't replace it. So we're not getting any pressure out of the tip. My fault, not the brush. You can see I left everything exposed here. My bad, moo moo. Got to have something for it to push against. See? Everything's good now. Went to swap those and simply took one off. Alright. I am using the Aspire Pro compressor. It has a tank, so notice the compressor is not going to be running the whole time. So I'm doing a very heavy pre-shade. Turning my spray booth back on. Fun having it. Let me know if audio starts to suffer or anything. I do have it set up on the camera close to me tonight. And I'm going to work nice and quick. I will not be paying much attention to the chat at this point, except to check on whether or not there is any degradation in the quality of the audio. Alright, so for my pre-shading, where do I want to go? Around all my little seams. I'm also going to do a very light black, effectively a dark gray over the sides here. Even though the vehicle is going to be a dark gray, again, this is intentionally, like I said, I always prime in white. I am in this case intentionally desaturating the color a bit, because we get the time to airbrush this, and we should at this point. Oh yeah, we're good. I can be quick. I'll do a bit of color modulation. Oh, I love what this airbrush does to the acrylic paint. I really do. And having a bit of desaturation in here will make the color modulation just a bit simpler. Trying to get out of the way of the camera. Apologies. Blowing that out to clean the brush. Come in here, get some panel lining. This airbrush really is a dream. Oops. My bad. Always remember to start your air off your model. Otherwise, that's what happens. Hitting the road wheels, and we are good with black. All right, we have a question here from, well, I'm just going to say someone because I can't quite make that out. Nightage, wanting to know what I think about the Badger Velocity, and the fact is I haven't used one, so I don't have an opinion. One of the things I am going to say right now is never backblow your airbrush. Alright, I might have to find the intake straw for my cleaning cup there, just because it will make this much easier. Clean that bad boy out. Another one of the great things about the Badger hopper, it does come with a built-in hopper. It's nice and large, certainly large enough for any models that we're ever going to be working on, including big pieces. So you can clean it out very quickly, very easily. I'm just spraying through my thinning mixture between colors here. Again, we'll get into the thinning mixture more on the airbrush episode. Mountain Blue wants to know what backblow is. Yeah, and our Dogma's got the point. I will explain the airbrush stuff next month. It says next week. I wish I could do this every week. Next month for the airbrushing episode. We'll talk about backblowing on the airbrush episode. So, I've got my black on here. Now our Dogma says my bad, and I tell you, man, don't feel bad. Believe me, at some point I'd love to do this every week. It probably won't be 4 to 6 Pacific. It'll be more traditional businessy hours, which for Secret Weapon is 8 to 4 right now. Somewhere in there, I will probably start doing a weekly broadcast. This is my dude. I love this. Answering hobby questions from you guys, going out doing the workshops, the classes, the travel, the videos. It's my favorite part of the job. It really is. So I got my gray. In this case, this is Iron Hole Gray P3. You'll notice that as I go, you might notice, as I go, pick that up for you a bit. I am. Let's move this camera. It's going to make things a little more complicated for me. Hopefully, a little better for you. I'm going to spill paint all over my desk because that's what I do. That's why it's my desk. All right, there we go. Woo! That's bright. All right, so spill paint all over my desk again. Got my model. I'm taking my Iron Hole Gray, filling in the white sections. Doing my best to avoid the panel lines where I already appreciated. So you can see I already get some of the little, again, desaturation. Manually focus that. See, got to figure things out as we go. I'm going to switch over to all this camera settings. Seriously, configure video input, camera control. Boom! We'll get this all dialed down. It's going to be a science here. So again, doing this nice and quick. Forgot to texture the gun, that's alright. Not ideal, but alright. Hit the wheels, because the wheels would still be gray. Side of the hull here. wheels. One of the things I skipped that I had planned to do but we don't have time for is hairspray. So we'll talk about that on another episode. Gives me another chance to paint one of these because I really do enjoy the model. But if I can get the zoom to work here for us, the right angle, what I'd like to show. So we kept the texture. So if you look at this hull, change our zoom and our texture. There we go. Oh, look at that. We kept texture. I'm happy with this panel here so far. I'm not quite as happy here. Some spots that are too smooth. But see the texture we got on the hull. Not as happy on the texture here, a little too smooth, sanded too much off. Something I usually spot when I prime the model. Happy with the texture here. Again, even at 1/56 scale, we've added a lot of interest to this, and we can weather that. So as we come through here later, I'll hit some of those divots with pigments and oils. Mix things up a bit. Zoom the heck back out. Alright. So, let me go ahead and add some highlight color. Tell you again about all the things that you don't do with an airbrush. Like mixing your pot this way. First highlight color, again picking out panels. Sorry, I'm back. Paying attention to where the camera's at, not where I need to be. Picking out panels. You get an incredible amount of control out of an airbrush with just a little bit of practice. And again, you can get a line out of an airbrush about a ½ millimeter wide. Just incredible. This is all stuff I could technically do with a traditional brush. It's harder to get the smooth transitions, it takes so much longer. Alright, so a few translucent layers like that. Tip out a little bit of this because I don't need that much. Add some more highlight color. I'm going to go a little more extreme on this highlight. I'm adding my already thin shade, or highlight color. This is the was it icy blue? Frostbite. Alright, definitely not mixing in my cup. Very nice light gray. Focusing on the areas nearest the gun. because I want to draw the focus to the gun. Generally speaking, on an armor model, the gun is more important. Draw the eye to it, the area around it. Very lightly going to dust by road wheels, just like a glaze. Only because I forgot to do them with the last color. And I can do it so lightly it won't make a big difference. Alright, get my engine compartments. It's already getting some variation in color here. Pull up the top of that panel. Pull up the top of that panel. Dump out all of my base color and highlight mix. Go all highlight. Two-Ton Studios has asked about the spray booth. I will talk about that again in October. Somebody wants to ask me on Facebook, even if you type it up now. I'll try to respond later. I picked it up for $80 on eBay. It's okay. I'm going to spend the money on a real spray booth because I do enough spraying for it to matter. Particularly, I spray with some rather nasty toxic stuff on a regular basis. So I'm getting a better spray booth. For casual airbrushers, I can recommend this, though. By casual, I mean less than a couple hours a day. There's a rather nasty mold line down the center of that gun I'm going to have to deal with later. But deal with it I will. Won't be the end of the world. Now the only spots of pure white I'm going to use on this are for the insignia. And there on the gun. Again, to draw on the focus. I'm going to bring you guys back to me while I clean this airbrush. Boom! Hello again! So we get into the home stretch here. Clean out the color on the airbrush for a moment. Much easier to do when I've got the straw working in my cleaning cup. Hopefully it's in the box that came back from Nova open. It certainly should be. Find that, get myself back to working condition. I do clean my airbrush completely between uses. Right now I'm just doing a between color rinse. I've been around some other airbrushers who say that even what I do for between color rinse is excessive. I'll tell you this, it beats being excessive to having to replace your airbrush every few months. Turn off the light for the moment. We'll come back to it in a couple minutes as I start looking at the model. Alright, we need some more paper towels. Put that where it belongs. Alright. Spray booth for the moment. Boom! Let's move this. I will do the last of those. The last little teeny tiny bit of spraying that I might do, I will do over here. usual spot. Alright. At this point, put this back on so I don't have to sit here smelling the thinner. What we have is our, wow, it is far away. Alright, I see your guys' comments about too much light. I'll do what I can here. Filter this a bit. Alright, so you can see I do get some nice transition. Not a true color modulation to the extent that I would want. I'd want to bring up the white. I'd come in with a bit of shade, a bit more shade. But you can definitely see even from the top down that the color does draw the focus onto the gun barrel here. I do have that nasty seam to clean up. That is pretty unpleasant, but we'll fix that. I would at this point actually use some actual white, Menthol white highlight, great for a final highlight. I would use some Menthol white highlight to mix things up there a bit. What I was going to do, and still might, one of my stencil sets, Verlinden makes some very nice etch brass stencil sets. And in this color set, I would want to go for 1/48 scale guys there. See if we have time to do that real quick. Maybe on the set that I've already opened instead of the one that I haven't. Alright, so hobby knife 1/48. Again, 1/48 a bit big for the Warlord model, but since they don't make a set of 1/56 stencils for me, we have to do it up on our own. Right, of course, right. Maybe I can be smarter than this, maybe I can't. Well, I certainly don't want you guys to sit here just watching me clean this off all night, so we will talk about something else. I will come back to the chat channel. Here we go. Mr. Justman, why you no wear gloves? 'Cause I'm not. I should. I'm a bad person. I really am. I'm a bad person. I should be wearing gloves. It is the reality of it. I do have gloves. In fact, on the back there, if you take a look, oh no you can't, it's in the way of this, but I've actually got 2 boxes of different nitrile gloves that live over there behind me. And yeah, I do typically wear my gloves. I am not wearing the gloves tonight. Again, mostly because I didn't want you guys to sit around waiting for me to put on gloves and all that other stuff. It doesn't need to happen, right? Of course right. Of course right. So, I did get my stencil cut out here. We've got tuned in for the first time and wasn't here at the start. What sort of camera do you have with a boom for the shots and the minis? Great questions. We can talk about the setup another time, unless you want to email me, Mr. Justin at secretweaponminiatures.com. Only because as we come into the last 12 minutes here, I do want to talk a bit about hitting this thing with the stencil, doing a bit of color modulation. I am going to attach this to my model. It is a stencil, so I need to make sure that it is very, very firmly attached. Nightage wants to know if I would recommend Tamiya colors for airbrushing. In fact, airbrushing, let me do this backwards, is the only thing I would recommend Tamiya colors for. Tamiya makes airbrush or paint colors that are great in an airbrush, that are not great any other time for any other application ever. Don't use Tamiya paints in anything but an airbrush. Ever. Ever. I can't stress that enough. Don't do it. You might be tempted. You wake up drunk one morning and say, I should put some Tamiya paints on my brush and just go nuts. And you're wrong. You're just wrong. Don't do that. More puppies will die. Tamiya also makes the only paint that I use their commercial thinner for. Tamiya makes an acrylic paint thinner. And I always thought that the idea of an acrylic paint thinner was silly until I used the Tamiya paints for the first time. And I said, oh, I should really use their thing for this. Alright, off topic, 2 Ton Studios has asked me, is the Secret Weapon orange wash a good choice for shading yellow? It certainly can be. It depends on what you mean by good choice and what you're trying to accomplish with your yellow at the time. If you're looking for an orange shade, an orange glaze to your yellow, then yes, the Secret Weapon orange wash is in fact a good wash for that. If you're looking for a brown wash or a brown glaze to your yellow, I would probably recommend not breaking the lid on your Mammoth White. I would recommend using dark sepia, sewer water, something more brown, because you're after a brown glaze. So it really depends on the color that you're after. It is perfectly acceptable to do that. Sure, why not? All right. Oh, right. I don't have my. What else is gonna be interesting? Just a drop, little bottle. And again, for those of you wondering, yes, we will talk about airbrushing stuff on Airbrushing Month in October. Alright, we'll know in just a minute whether or not I got my stencil down tight enough. I'm just going to blow some regular air through here now. Help dry that off. The secret to not pulling up paint is to, the question here from our Dogma is that masking tape can pull up the paint. That's true. Typically I actually take the blue painter's masking tape like this if I'm going to use that instead of like my Tamiya tape, and press it against my trousers a couple of times, get some of the stick off of it. Works like a charm. Boom! Using a stencil. Look at that. Bam! Go Nazis. I mean, you know, you're lost and all. Thank you for having awesome tanks with super fun texture to paint. There's that. Alright, so, real quick, do the same thing. Oh, that's going to make a mess. I went too heavy trying to hurry up. Small spray, lots of air, small spray, lots of air. Let's see how much damage I did there. Not a lot, not a lot. It's a little fuzzy, but I can live with it. I'm not happy, but I can live with it. Take my stencil off, put it away. And because I already have my trash can missing, there it is. The Mammoth White highlight loaded into my brush, I'm going to pick out those spots where I'd want maximum focus on the vehicle. Corners of the hull here, panel by the front, panel by the front, panel by the front, ridge of the gun barrel. Light glaze over the top, very light glaze, just to lighten things down just a bit more on the top. I'll blend those together a bit. So, cleaning out my airbrush again. I'm just going to do my between color rinse for the moment. When we're done here, I'll have to make my wife wait while I finish cleaning the airbrush completely. I do clean my airbrush like completely every time. I take it apart, I clean out all the bits. Every few weeks I add a couple drops of airbrush lubricant to keep the parts moving well. Those of you that have been to any of the demos that Grex Airbrush has been at, Brian will tell you one of the features of the Grex that it's so hardy you don't have to clean it out every time. Do it anyway. He's right. It's an impressive airbrush. They've done some good work with the engineering there. But it's a $300 airbrush, so, well, 300 plus. So for the love of all things made out of puppy ears, please clean your airbrush every time. There's really no reason not to. It takes a couple minutes of your time. Saves you money. Even with an amazing airbrush like the Chrome here that's only $129. Why spend $129 just because you felt like being lazy, right? Yeah, Wicked Elf just pointed out he's got a Grex and it does need the input cleaned. Yeah, Brian knows his stuff. Again, they've got a great product. When I was at Nova, he was pitching the Grex to me, and one of the things was that as a regular airbrusher, I'd be able to leave paint in it overnight and come back to it the next day and clean off the tip and good to go. And I would never ever do that. I don't even care if the airbrush could handle it, and I knew I was safe. I just couldn't do it. I'm too compulsive about my cleaning. So there's a lot we didn't get to that I was hoping we could. I always think we're going to have more time than we do. But what I did get was some nice focus in the front of the tank. My base coat's down. I'll do all my paint chipping by hand on this one. I'll do it with brushes and sponges. I got my insignia on here. I built a little stowage rack. I will take my paint and put the cap on. I will take my 1/48 scale as yet unreleased secret weapon fuel tank and put it on here. All colored up. I'll pigment it. I'll detail it. I'm certainly going to add some mud and texture to the inside of the tracks here. And you'll be able to follow the progress on that one at, well, either here on the blog, so blog.secretweaponminiatures.com, on our Facebook page, or of course, if you want to see more of the step-by-step work on it, particularly as I clean up this horrible mold seam there that I just totally failed to get because I didn't bother with files.